Dr. David Pessy has joined us on the line. We're putting it together with what you just listened to. Doc, good morning.
Good morning, my brother.
And Doctor is a student of history and politics. I hope you're healthy.
I believe so.
Mm.
And this has been a very interesting juncture in our history to observe things happening.
Mm.
As a student, is the most beneficial.
So it's been a huge learning experience for you.
It ought to be for everybody.
And I'm tempted to ask you what you're learning from everything you're observing before I come back and raise the issue.
You have the Ghanaian elite tearing up. They've been quite negligent and irresponsible over the last few years.
Ghana's gold.
They are finding their voice.
Radio gold.
Now, there's a central thing about all politics. That all politics is founded on interest. To begin with, material interest.
Material interest.
Yes. So because of the recklessness of God's own chosen government. All these years they were happy that they had Nanado. He was their own. He was God's chosen. He had turned over the economy to his cousin,
Ghana's gold.
who ran a Ponzi scheme. Pyram, that's what we call it here, right? He ran a Ponzi scheme on borrowing. And every Ponzi scheme will collapse at some point. But basically, he turned over the economy so that his cousin could run a Ponzi scheme so that he could compensate himself for what he has spent on his election. And that's why we are under a lot of cow manure now. But the Ghanaian elites were quite happy with the corn that was sold, the working people. They were happy with the killings that were required to grant Nanado a second term. One day. But now their lives are being touched. Pensions. So they are out, up in arms. Isn't that a lesson? Politics is simply about interest. Period.
Does that apply to the former Chief Justice?
It applies to everybody living. If you must eat,
Ghana's gold.
if you must clothe yourself, if you must find a place to lay your head, if you must get your kids educated, if you must be attended to if you get ill, all those are material matters. And our interest in those determine where we stand in politics. It is not whether one is a Kusasi or a Frafra, or whether one is a homosexual or a lesbian, or one is tall or short, or Anglican or Presbyterian. Those are these things, but they are completely relevant to our material existence. So this has been a very interesting time for me.
So your suggestion is that all the people we are hearing would have ordinarily been quiet if they do not have if they did not feel attacked.
If they are not being touched, what would they be saying? I think we have a saying in Ghana that if you see a frog out in daylight hopping about, then you know that there's something after it. Right? Why would a former Chief Justice be found on a picket line and be engaged in a verbal brawl with an in-law? Why would she do that? But you know, that is the nature of life.
Ghana's gold. Region
There's
gold.
nothing wrong at all with him, but it's for those who are interested in politics to know that interests are the foundation of all politics. Period. There are no neutrals in politics. Because often I hear, and I'm saying this because often I've heard that your station is an NDC station, right? And it's a kind of nonsense that I hear most often repeated by quote-unquote NDC people who have been told to believe that somehow they are neutral people in our society. All those who were quiet in this recent period, who are very vocal under the government of the NDC and John Mahama, were working for the NPP. Period.
Ghana's gold.
Whether they were, how would you call them, pastoral fathers or archbishops or overseers or whatever you call those characters. I don't know whether I'm making myself clear.
Very clear.
There are no neutrals in politics. And everybody living is touched and involved in politics. Even the dead. So there are still struggling going on about in Nkrumah, are there not?
Well, those
There are struggles going on about Hitler and Napoleon and even Caesar. People, even hundreds and even thousands of years dead, and their place in history and the relevance of what they did or didn't do for our lives today. But I'm sure you wanted to talk about the economy or some other things.
Yeah, but just one last on this issue, because whenever you say that, you have said this consistently, and whenever I say that, there are those who come to me and tell me that, what about those of them who vote based on issues that I don't follow one political party or another? I look at my life and then make a decision. Can't I call myself a neutral?
But aren't they just repeating what I've said? They look at their lives, don't they?
Yes.
Bottom or Tittenham.
Radio gold.
Isn't that what they do? So those people who ask you those questions, what is the base for them asking you those questions?
No, because they're assuming the neutrality is based on partisan lines, that I am neither with the MPP or NDC.
That is complete and utter nonsense. Material interest. You can spend another session on the character of the politics we have and why working people don't really have much of a choice between the NDC and the MPP as they are composed and
Ghana's
operate
gold.
today.
Radio Gold.
But I don't think, well, I mean, we can talk about that. Maybe we should.
Well,
That is the design of the system to give the poor working people an illusion that they have choice. Right? That's all it does. It gives them an illusion that they have choice. Every 4 years or whenever the electoral calendar decides, you have a combination of an auction and a beauty contest to select our leaders. An auction and a beauty contest. The auction makes sure that no poor person can offer himself to be in the leadership of our country. Very soon, I'm sure the NDC will be conducting its auction to select a flag bearer. But the NPP is also about to do so. But it is precisely because of those things that's why those governments generally fail to deliver.
Well, Doc, let me then jump to the discussion we've been having this morning.
Yes.
In fact, it's based on a Facebook post made by former President John Dramani Mahama,
Yes.
who says, this is the post. When I noticed we're running into an economic ditch, I made several calls for a genuine dialogue and national consensus on an economic program.
Yes.
The arrogance and intransigence of a president and incompetence of a finance minister and economic management team have led us here. We could have forged a broad non-partisan consensus on the IMF bailout and accompanying debt restructuring program. Alas, it seems too late now. First of all, your comment on that?
Well, I'll generally agree with his phrasing, except that I will replace the non-partisan with the national.
Okay. National consensus rather than non-partisan.
Precisely. You know, I've been in and out of your station for a while. I thought I heard you talking about the Senchi process, right?
Yes, yes.
Whatever its flaws, it managed to hammer out something. But at least it kept us within a certain paradigm, which is basically the foundation of our problems. Now, we are going back to the IMF for, is it the 16th or 17th time?
I think this will be 17.
Yes. Without a fundamental shift in the paradigm, we'll go back for an 18th time and a 19th time. In the global political economy, the IMF fulfills a certain function. Its job is that we are able to pay our debts. That's its primary function. That all countries are able to pay their debts. But the conditions of life and arrangements that guarantee that we'll get into debt is not their business. That is the business of the Ghanaian people.
Ghana's gold. Radio Gold.
I don't know whether I'm making sense or not.
You're saying the responsibility to deliver a good life for the people of Ghana is the work of the Ghanaian, not the IMF.
It cannot be the work of the IMF. The IMF's job is to make sure that you pay your creditors. The IMF is part of the global architecture that guarantees that countries like Ghana will get into debt. Getting into debt is guaranteed. Why? For a very simple reason. We produce commodities of low value, like cocoa, for instance, right? And we export it. And then we may import chocolate at a much higher value. Right? The global political economy is designed to make sure that countries like in Africa and other parts of the world stay as we are, as producers and exporters of raw materials in exchange for finished value-added commodities. Right? Are we making progress, sir?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Now, and I can give you an illustration. In 1960, you required the equivalent of a ton of cocoa, roughly, to exchange for one Volkswagen Saloon. We call them VW, as kids. You know about them?
In
1960.
a ton of cocoa could get you a VW.
Precisely.
Really?
Yes, sir.
So if those who are doing cocoa farming nowadays were doing cocoa farming in those days, they would have been owners of a lot of VWs.
Today, you need about 15 to 20 tons. I'm just doing this illustration to illustrate what the problem we have. The so-called gadget economy that our president waxed lyrical about changing. But it was all a con. It was a con so that he could get his hands on the public test. And he has been truly serving us this past 6+ years, hasn't he? Hello?
Truly serving us.
Yes.
As the president has been serving us properly.
It's guaranteed that, as your last speaker, I didn't get his name, some doctor.
Dr. Amachi Boatin.
As he said. He made a point about the president not having a clue about our situation, because he said we'll be out of it very soon. Because the hole that we are in is going to take at least a generation and a half, in my estimation, to get out of. A generation and a half. I'm talking about something like 40 years. That's where we are.
40 years.
About, yes.
To get out of this.
Out of the hole. Get out from under the heap of cow dung that he has buried our country. And very few people have an understanding about the nature of the problem we have. But you see, this regime has been very successful with PR, with managing the news, the narrative. And they believe that this is just another occasion. You understand? They believe that it's just another occasion. So with their media assigns, they want to stampede Ghanaians into a program so that they can have some more money to spend and leave, quote unquote, a legacy. How else will we keep the criminal who has run this Ponzi scheme of borrowing, whose recklessness has brought us where we are, who has been cooking the books? You know what cooking the books means? He has engaged in creative accounting, cooking the books. That has brought us to where we are. Why would anybody insist that he should remain in charge of taking us out of the mess? The person who has lied, who has the most interest in keeping and covering up the lying and the stealing and the criminality. Would you put him in charge of a rescue operation from that crime? Would you? Now I'm asking a very simple question, my brother.
Not at all. If it was up to me.
Yes. But you see, and I'm also disappointed with the NDC. After the inept and incompetent management of the censure motion, when all they needed to do was to say, okay, we are putting ourselves behind the MPP guys who say the guy must go. Right? They didn't do that. I don't know for what reason. I even learned that their man, the speaker, they didn't consult him. So they had this shambolic committee that they set up. It was basically a cover-up committee. Not so. And their charges were so poorly articulated and prosecuted that in the end, Ken the Crook came out looking good. And since then, the matter of his complete, how would you call it? A complete unacceptability of him being where he is has been buried. I'm also reading that government has secured its gains. That was a report that some illiterate journalists put out yesterday. Because there are also problems with my brothers in the media. There's a lot of illiteracy and miseducation. They're talking about government having made its gains because they have secured more than 80% of the participation of bondholders. I'm sure you must have read something like that.
In fact, they are reporting the statement of the Ministry of Finance.
Oh, okay. Good.
I'm looking at the statement as we speak.
Well, okay. Well, the same guys will hold a kinky party because they are gotten out of the strictures of the INF and could run a Ponzi scheme. So they had a celebration with kinky. So why not? So they can talk about having made gains because they can look forward to more borrowing and more commissions on our misery. But I think I digress slightly. You know, I've made this point maybe on Alaji before. We are where we are because you have in our president someone who has built his entire politics, his entire political life on dishonesty and con. I'm sure you will recollect that I've made this point before.
Yeah.
And that is why we are where we are.
And at that point, you even compared him to Donald Trump.
But he's in a singular league with Donald Trump and
You mentioned Boris Johnson too.
Yeah. Globally, you won't find any gang like them. And that's what we have to face up to. And like I said, I don't think that I'll be surprised if even 5% of our population truly understand where we are and what's about to happen to us.
Well, I wanted then to ask you the suggestion where you said you replace the non-partisan with national.
Yes. But then I'll proceed. Now, because of the attempt to hide the criminality and the lying, the finance minister has kept to his chest information that must be public information. At this stage, all Ghanaians must be privy to the so-called debt sustainability analysis that they made, right? Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
Good. You don't have it?
No.
Good. And then he is proceeding like the CPP of recent memory proceeded. They will never have a round table where everybody will present, but they'll call you and they'll have a one-on-one conversation with you. And the conversation they'll have with the next person will be different. So you've had this drama where one deadline has been postponed. Not so. I think we've had about 4 or 5 deadlines.
Yes, already.
Precisely. Now, I'd even put a question mark about this so-called recent conclusion and success that they are touting. But what I can say without fear of contradiction is that this first approach will fail. Because to solve this problem, to get out of where we are, requires that we know how we got in here. The question that the NDC and perhaps Mr. Mama also have added, which they didn't add, which has been posed by Sofa Akufo. How did we get here? Why? And whose contributions enable that? The Ghanaian citizens must have answers to these questions. Then the Ghanaian people must take ownership of the problem.
Ownership of the problem?
Yes.
That we are responsible?
No.
Okay.
Having found out who is responsible and having dealt with them appropriately.
Having found out who is responsible and dealing with them appropriately.
Yes. For instance, Ken will not be where he is. Maybe we might impeach and remove the president. I don't know whether I'm making sense or not.
Okay.
Because this is a problem for the entire Ghanaian people, including persons yet to be born. As for the dead, they are free. I'm talking about a problem which will require, at the very least, 30 to 40 years to fix. It's not going to be easy.
Well, let me then conclude by asking you whether you also felt that the former president knew from the very beginning that he was not going to get that consensus building forum when you are saying that they are holding the facts of the problem close to their chest. They were never going to disclose it anyway.
Well, you see, that point should have been made. That it is the criminality and the lie and the dishonesty that has brought us where we are. That's the foundation of the problem. It is the dishonesty, the con, the lying, the PR, and the criminality. Look at the criminal actions of the governor of the Bank of Ghana. I'm sure you've also read and heard about it.
Yeah.
Printing money quietly to help the government out of its problem. In my book, that is high treason. Because he ought, in the first place, it's not, the law does not allow it. And in any case, if something that has that to be must be contemplated, he must resort to our parliament. He did not do that. He did that quietly. He had simply become an errand boy of the president and the minister of finance.
Doc, we'd have to leave it here.
Oh, I think you should give me a few moments. And I know that you're in a hurry.
Yes, I am. Okay.
I was going to make the point that the president, President Nana-Addo, would not have paid heed to President John Mahama for a very simple reason.
Ghana's gold. Radio gold.
He feels an entitlement to our country. Our country really belongs to him and his clan. And as for the NDC and the CPP before it, they are illegitimate. And if people are illegitimate, you don't even consider them making a decision on any matter, do you?
I love Radio Gold 0.5.
But it is the Ghanaian people who must recognize the gravity of our situation, who must first of all move aside the criminal ken and if necessary move aside the president so that we can get to grips with the problem. It is that simple and straightforward. We are going nowhere fast with the approach we are on. I can bet my head on this.